Greetings, salutations, welcome to ASMR with Dar. I'm Dar, and this week we are going to be reading excerpts from The Strong Black Woman: How a Myth Endangers the Physical and Mental Health of Black Women, written by Marita. I'm going to be reading excerpts from this book instead of the entire book, like we did last week. This book is basically a book of essays written by Black women regarding the health, physical and mental health of Black women. So, without further ado, allow me to read to you. This excerpt is called Through the Fire. I am making this narrative journey with my sisters. It never occurred to me to make it alone. They are with me as I cross borders, step into minefields, stand in the harsh light of calling out and calling on the conundrum of the strong Black woman syndrome. I asked and searched for Black women's stories, stories untold, unheralded, stories hibernating, stories that are a reflection of what we are: precious, tender, fragile, worth fighting for, stories of our glory and our loss. How do you hurt? Where do you hurt? How does your hurt feel? When was the last time someone who wasn't a doctor asked you that? What does your healing sound like? What is it made of? Do you create it alone, or are there other hands holding yours? When were you last praised? When did you last rejoice? Can you rejoice in yourself, by yourself? What does it mean to you to be a strong Black woman? I know what I know about me, sort of. Sometimes. I know my shifting sands. But now that I am here, now that I have set sail, I cannot launch alone. My sisters and their stories are necessary, and I cannot navigate the murky waters of this exploration without them. This narrative, these pages, these words are communal property. This is a house of stories designed to give us shelter. The reimagined history of my heart, of Harriet, of Rosa, of Fannie Lou, of Patrice. Quiet as it's kept, the strong Black woman syndrome is an invisible superpower that explains Black women's extraordinary leadership genius. We lead, we blaze new trails. That's what we do. I am so proud to be a Black woman. But as we lift up ourselves and the race and the world, what price do we pay? Becoming a new age strong Black woman. The women who bravely shared with me their stories of overcoming trauma told me stories that are uplifting and inspiring. Black women are healing and holding on to the best parts of themselves everywhere. Every day, I was impressed by the complexity and power and faithfulness of their journeys. They used every tool available to heal: therapy, prayer, meditation, patience, running, forgiveness, love. Black women are powerful believers in an unseen power that is benevolent. We have seen this faith at work in our lives. Our mothers and grandmothers have passed down accounts of how they have been delivered, and they and we are delivering ourselves. There is a new world coming, and we can design it. We can live in it. Fear, loathing, love, our bodies inside out. The things we carry. Deconstructing the stereotypes, mythology, and misinformation that too often define our health and ill health is a necessary prelude to any meaningful discussion about our bodies. Let's start by talking about fat. In the Black community, we have long seen big women as voluptuous, beautiful, sexy, powerful. Some of our most talented, valued, and impactful cultural icons and artists have been big women. Ethel Waters, Ma Rainey, Big Mama Thornton, and the singer Lizzo is loved as much for the way she has turned love of her big body into a near religion as for her joyous performance and soulful singing. White women, white society, are finally catching up to us in their current acknowledgement that a big body can be beautiful, strong, and healthy. Our acceptance of the big female body exists beside that fact that for decades, studies of obesity have determined that African American women are consistently more obese than white women. The Body Mass Index, or BMI, is the formula for this conclusion. What is BMI? It is a person's weight in kilograms divided by the square of their height in meters. BMI can be used to screen for weight categories that may lead to health problems. We often think of BMI when considering obesity, but it identifies underweight as well. The BMI has long been considered the unquestioned determination of obesity. Increasingly, it has been denounced as bogus, irrelevant, and even dangerous for a variety of reasons, ranging from the fact that it was originally designed to measure the body mass of populations, not individuals, and the illogic of one's one-size-fits-all reasoning. What is obesity? Obesity is defined as excess weight that poses a danger to health because it puts you at risk for type 2 diabetes, high cholesterol, stroke, and heart disease. And with or without the BMI test, we know that Black women are disproportionately obese and overweight. This is the muddled backdrop against which many of us are chiseling away at the hard core of the legacy of annihilation of Black women's confidence in and love of their bodies. There is a medical industry using a tool that is inadequate and possibly misleading. There are the competing images we possess of large Black bodies despised by the dominant society, yet accepted and even praised within our community. There is the undeniable knowledge that obesity and being overweight are health risks. We are erased and excluded from important medical studies and clinical trials. For many of us, a visit to the doctor's office means having our complaints about pain ignored because of the still prevalent racist belief that our threshold for pain is higher than that of whites. If the requests of Serena Williams and Beyonce for specific treatments and medication during and after their experiences giving birth were met with skepticism and resistance by health professionals, many Black women may wonder, how could they leave the doctor's office with their lives? And yet, half of all Black girls will develop diabetes. 80% of Black women are overweight or obese, and Black women die of preventable obesity-related illnesses, like stroke and heart attack, more than anyone else in America. Illnesses that could be prevented or managed with changes in diet and levels of activity. Black women's lower resting metabolism and higher rate of insulin resistance accounts for our thickness, our curves, and overall body size. And studies show that we can be big and be healthy. Still, we are near collapse from the weight of the innumerable micro and macro risk factors inherent in our daily lives. An overweight white woman does not have her excess weight supercharged, made more deadly by the interactions of that weight with the impact of systemic racism on her body. My grandmother and my mother were overweight. They both died of obesity-related disease. Obesity was a major factor in my mother's early death. Obesity gave her high blood pressure and an unhealthy heart. Her right and ability to live her life, to try to fulfill her dreams, love and support me, was cut short by obesity. Even if you are not obese, if you are overweight, you are more likely to develop health changes. Writer Alice Randall wrote about her struggle to attain and maintain a healthy weight and observed, quote, "Many Black women were fat because we want to be. How many white girls in the 60s grew up praying for fat thighs? I know I did. I asked God to give me big thighs like my dancing teacher Diane. There was no way I wanted to look like Twiggy, the white model whose boy-like build was the dream of white girls. Not the Joe Tex ringing in my ears. How many middle-aged white women fear their husbands will find them less attractive if their weight drops to less than 200 pounds? I have yet to meet one, but I know many Black women whose sane, handsome, successful husbands worry when their women start losing weight. My lawyer husband is one." Unquote. As I read Randall's essay, I remember that even my husband, watching me perform yoga and Pilates, occasionally urges me to not to lose too much weight. We need a radically new and revised consciousness about our bodies, a consciousness that allows us to talk without shame or judgment about how excess weight is killing us. What are the things we carry, and how much do they weigh? We came to think of them as twin pandemics. One, a virus whose arrival was to most of us a surprise, a shock to the system, even as scientists knew its arrival was inevitable. The other, racism, a disease that had morphed into new forms and shapes. Even as we thought the march of history, decades of activism, new cultural changes and laws had nearly defeated it. The World Health Organization defined coronavirus as an infectious disease caused by a newly discovered coronavirus. While most people who become infected develop a mild case, those with underlying medical issues such as diabetes, cancer, high blood pressure, or heart disease develop a serious illness that is often fatal. Droplets of saliva in a discharge from an infected person who coughs or sneezes or talks loudly can spread the disease. COVID-19 spreads more easily than the flu, causes more serious illness in some people, takes longer before people are symptomatic, and those infected with it can be contagious much longer. As the virus mutated, more of those who were young and healthy were also struck and sometimes died. The perennial pandemic of racism has infected America since its founding, literally and figuratively, sickening and shortening the lifespans of generations of black people. Yet inoculating whites against recognition of it or a reckoning with its impact and the negative effect of racism on whites goes largely unexplored and unrecognized. The initial phase of the COVID-19 pandemic forced us into lockdown, separation from one another, and a 3-month quarantine. As we uneasily, hesitantly ventured out, the video that captured the death of George Floyd being choked under the knee of a white Minneapolis police officer, Derek Chauvin, drove many of us, jobless or wounded from meager salaries and no health care safety net, victimized by the inept government response to the pandemic, grieving 20,000 dead in New York City, into the streets and protests throughout the country. A friend told me that all of this, every part of it, was ordained. The year 2020, she said, is a year of clarified and sharpened vision. 2020 is considered perfect vision. If infected with COVID-19, it is difficult to breathe. George Floyd died because he couldn't breathe. In the Bible, 20 is a symbol of waiting. In numerology, 20 is the beginning of a new decade. Transformation. Big time. I don't have to believe or not believe in God or the devil or angels to know that what I lived through, what filled my TV and computer screens, was in the truest sense earth-shattering. As Confederate statues were pulled from their moorings from Mississippi to Washington, D.C., everything was falling into place. Black and brown people in the U.S. were disproportionately impacted by COVID-19. The combination of underlying medical issues and the invasive impact of racism on all aspects of their lives meant that the disease discriminated against them. 3 months into the pandemic in Washington, D.C., while African Americans were 44% of the population, they were 74% of the COVID-19 deaths. One report stated in June of 2020, if they had died of COVID-19 at the same rate as white Americans, at least 14,400 Black Americans, 1,200 Latino Americans, and 200 Indigenous Americans would still be alive. The disease impacted women overall, and the types of jobs they had with special vigor. Black women sustained disproportionate losses of both life and livelihood. They put their lives at risk in low-wage caretaking jobs that often provided no benefits. Not working put their livelihoods in limbo. Working put their lives in jeopardy. The previously invisible workers deemed essential during the pandemic, postal workers, delivery people, cashiers, nurses caring for the elderly, suddenly became glaringly visible. Less than a month after George Floyd's death, police reform measures, from the radical to the conservative, revelations of systemic police racism and misconduct, all became part of a conversation that many had long thought impossible to begin or sustain. The CEO of Netflix and his wife donated $120 million to HBCUs. The Floyd family's GoFundMe page collected $13 million in donations. Books about race and racism topped the bestseller lists. White people called their Black friends to apologize for white racism. Aunt Jemima and Uncle Ben were retired. Schools, Hollywood, the publishing industry, every profession responded to the demands of African Americans for redress and new policies to root out and defeat systemic racism. and black and brown men were found publicly hanged near City Hall in Palmdale, California, from a tree in Victorville, California, from trees near a park in an elementary school in Texas. Black women began buying guns and learning how to shoot them. White militias swore to defend white supremacy to the death. The rates of depression and anxiety in the African American community shot up. When I emailed Dr. Kanika Bell in Atlanta, where Rayshard Brooks was shot in the back by a white police officer 18 days after George Floyd became victim, martyr, and symbol, and asked how her clients were faring, she emailed back that many were suffering insomnia, suicidal thoughts, and increasing anxiety. I've thought again and again about Speech Sounds, Octavia Butler's award-winning science fiction story about a society in which, due to a global environmental catastrophe, some people have lost the ability to read and speak, while others have lost the ability to write, and everyone suffers from some diminished capacity to communicate. I often teach the story as a masterpiece of structure and style, as well as for its compelling message about the chaos that results when the ability to communicate is lost or fractured. The story is a stark dramatization of how much we depend on the ability to understand one another, to maintain not just law and order, but the crucial bonds of humanity that connect us one to another. Okay, so that's going to be it for The Strong Black Woman, How a Myth Endangers the Physical and Mental Health of Black Women. If you are interested in purchasing this book, I will leave the link down below where you can purchase that on Amazon and give it a go. It's an excellent book. I intend on finishing reading it myself. Maybe not on my channel because I don't want to give it all away. I want you all to read it on your own. So next week we will choose a different book to read, and hopefully you'll tune in. Last thing, don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel. This has been ASMR with Dar. Take care.